Good morning. Welcome back to the Vitality Project. I'm Dr. Bob. Yesterday, we introduced the connection between stress and stress hormones like cortisol on the one hand, and dopamine, a brain chemical that we all have, on the other. Let me say a little bit more about dopamine today. Dopamine is released in the reward center of our brain, in fact, in the midbrain, right between our ears. And dopamine is there by nature to motivate us towards anything that supports our survival. I'll give you a little exercise. Think for just a moment of your favorite dessert. Just imagining it, if you're able to bring it to mind, will likely evoke salivation and some desire for that dessert. If we measured dopamine in your brain right now, it would just have taken a small but observable uptick. Now, if you were able to actually eat this dessert, there'd be an even greater uptick. But why this increase in dopamine when imagining your favorite dessert? Well, you see, you might as well eat your favorite dessert if survival is your immediate task over some other things. For example, compare your favorite dessert. Let's say it's chocolate cake. What do you think would be better for you in terms of immediate survival? Chocolate cake, or let's say celery or broccoli? Actually, in terms of caloric value, you'd be better off eating chocolate cake. Don't tell your mom and dad that, okay? I don't think they would buy it, but it's the truth. And so dopamine is in our brains to motivate us towards things for survival. So let's try this experiment. If you imagine right now that you have a baseline dopamine level of, let's just say arbitrarily 1, thinking of chocolate cake or whatever your favorite dessert is will increase your dopamine level, let's say, to 1.25. Actually consuming that chocolate cake will raise it to 1.5. All of this is to motivate us to eat something that will help us to survive. How about if we introduce sexuality? Sexual orgasm will double our normal dopamine level from 1 to 2. You might ask, well, how does sex relate to survival? Well, if you think about it from a biological perspective, a high priority, some would say that the number one imperative biologically is for us to pass along our DNA to the next generation. And while that's not particularly romantic or Shakespearean, it probably is the case. And so the body needs to have significant incentive to move towards reproduction in terms of passing along that DNA. And so thus you get the doubling of dopamine, which in the natural realm is the, around sexuality, is the highest release of dopamine that we have in the natural realm. So if we think about the natural or the organic realm, that our dopamine levels double with sexual orgasm. Any guess what a common drug of abuse like cocaine does with our dopamine level? Well, it quadruples it. Imagine that, 4 times our normal dopamine level and twice as much dopamine release as sexual orgasm. Is it any wonder that cocaine is so incredibly addictive? You might imagine it this way. The brain is fooled into thinking that the dopamine, because of its high dopamine, the cocaine, because of its high dopamine release, is itself a biological imperative. Hence, people will give up their jobs, their relationships, etc., to seek drugs of addiction because of the dopamine release, and that in a sense the dopamine release of drugs of addiction trumps any of the natural reinforcers that we have built into our lives. What I'd like to do is have you come back tomorrow and let's look at some of these other addictive substances and their relationship to a dopamine release, as well as addictive behaviors other than substances, which are also related to dopamine release in the midbrain. In the meantime, I hope you have a good day. Thanks for joining me today.